Hello, everyone. My name is Kim Hummer. I'm the Specialty Crop Curator for the National Clone of Germplasm Repository at Corvallis, Oregon. Today, I want to talk to you about how to add a spreadsheet of evaluation data to a trait variable in GRIN. We'll use an example of strawberry data. GRIN areas, as you are aware, include a number of different sorts of information for each of the accessions that we have. We have accession information, which includes PI numbers, accession name, country, source, history, that kind of information. Secondly, there's inventory. Inventory information includes clonal names or the local name, the inventory name for a particular site, the location where the germplasm is stored, the availability status, and other kinds of information like that. We have an area called the COOP, which includes the cooperators. They're the donors, requesters, contacts of people that we have interacted with about our germplasm. There's an order processing section. And today, what we want to emphasize is the phenotypic evaluation of a record. And then there's one more, the genetic observation or the molecular characterization of that accession. But today, we want to focus on phenotypic observations. These observations can be taken in numerical variables, coded variables, or as text. Today, we're going to be talking about a numerical data that we've recently collected. And this data is in a working Excel data sheet. So we've taken a number of phenotypic observations on strawberries, and we've put them in this data sheet. As you can see, there's a lot of different information that was taken. There's 34 different rows, columns of information, and there's actually 284 strawberries that we've collected this information on. So today we're going to focus on the PI number for the accession, and we're going to focus on the yield, which I've highlighted in yellow. So this is just an example of how to upload the yield data, one of 17 different accessions that were taken in 2020 by a study that we're putting in the method called Hummer et al. 2020. So many data fields are required to upload information into GRIN. The first thing, as I mentioned, we need a method or a study environment in which the data was taken. So there's a method that's needed. The crop has to be defined. The crop trait has to be defined. The crop trait language has to be defined. And then we have the crop trait observation, where we have the actual data that we've taken on that particular trait. So all of these definitions need to be set out in GRIN before you can upload a particular type of crop trait observation. So in this study, the hard work has been done already. The method has been established, and the environmental study record is already uploaded to GRIN. The crop is uploaded to GRIN. The crop trait is uploaded to GRIN in terms of the name of the variables. And the crop trait observations are what we want to upload today. So there is a tab at the top of your screen called the Crop Trait Observation tab. And in this case, we've set up a tab. It's called Get Crop Trait Observation. And I've created a folder called Yield over on the left side in my folder list. And this folder is where I'm going to put this yield for strawberries. And it's going to be defined by this crop trait observation and the different categories that need to be uploaded. Now we go back to the Excel file with the data. I suggest making a new sheet in the Excel folder and name that new sheet GRIN upload, because we've got to prep the data. Even though it's in a nice and readable form for us, we've got to prep it so that GRIN can accept the data. So the data that we have had are in these other tabs, but we've just created a GRIN upload tab in Excel. Next, we want to move the different titles of the categories from the top line of GRIN over to the Excel file. So here's our Excel file, and this top line is going to be the variable names. And I've copied over the way they should be exactly as they are in GRIN. And the pink highlighted fields are mandatory and must have entries along with the data that we want to put into GRIN. So if the cells are not filled in these categories, that particularly entry row will error out when you try to upload it to GRIN. So you want to make sure that all of these columns in pink have some information in it, the correct information. Now it's time to prep for uploading the data to GRIN. So here we have the accession and we have the yield data. But take a good hard look at the accession information. What's wrong in that accession column? Can anybody see what's wrong there? The PI number needs a space between the PI and the number, or GRIN won't be able to read that. It's concatenated. So we need to use a find function in Excel, find the PI and replace the PI with a space, with PI and a space after it. So essentially, we have just added that in this column. Every PI now has a space after PI. It's been replaced. And then we have the number that is occurring after the space. So now the space is there. GRIN can read that. That's good. Here's our yield data. But GRIN needs to link the information with an inventory record. So we can either go back and add the C local number for each of the accessions where we took that yield data, or we could use a substitute. GRIN has an inventory record that's called a double star inventory record, and it consists of the PI number with a space and a double star after it. So if we can put this format using each of the PI numbers, add the double stars, we'll have an inventory reference that GRIN can link on. So we use B, column B, for prep work, and we've added space, star, star, and we've scrolled that all the way down. Next, we've inserted column C for the inventory numbers, and we're going to concatenate A2 and B2 into this first cell in the C2. And we're going to drag that formula completely down so that each of the PI numbers now have a double star after it. Now you're almost ready to transfer the columns of data to the GRIN upload sheet. Can anybody figure out, why are we almost ready? That looks good. It has this inventory, the double star inventory. Well, what is going to error out? On the Excel side, remember that when you combine columns, you need to paste values, and you have to have a column that has values that can be read elsewhere. So we need to do a paste of column C into column D, and now this inventory can be uploaded to GRIN. So the data are now prepped. We can select each of the columns and drag them over to GRIN once we have a space to put them in GRIN. So let's go back to the GRIN record. Now we're back on GRIN, and what we need to do is edit the data. Then we need to click on the yellow plus sign. We need to click there for as many row entries as we have data rows. So in this case, I have to click it 284 times to get empty rows to appear down this GRIN record. Once we have all the rows there in GRIN, we go back to the Excel sheet and we copy the inventory column that we just created. We copy the strawberry crop column and the crop trait, the yield in grams, that has to be copied down. This is on the Excel side at the moment. So we're just getting all those Excel columns prepped. Once we get everything prepped, the numeric value is where we're going to end up putting the yield information. The method is Hummer et al. 2020. We have a standard deviation we're going to add. The sample size was 3. And then we're going to put a note in the note column that the data is an estimate of the yield. So we have a specific piece of information we're going to put into the date field and copy that through each inventory entry. So here we are now on the GRIN side, and our inventory has been added, the strawberry crop, the crop trait of yield, that's all there. Our yield values are now in the numeric value column. The method is added. And if we go to the right, we find the rest of the data has been entered, copied all the way down for the 284 different records. So after all these entries are done, press save. And if all is okay, press save and exit. And as I like to do, I go back to public GRIN and take a search to see what public is seeing now that I've just uploaded this data. So for strawberry, we want to go to the descriptor area and we want to select strawberry as our crop. And then we can scroll down to the yield section, which is under production descriptors. And you'll notice that this yield is from data that was taken in the 1980s with a rating scale. So that was a high, medium, low situation. But our data was in grams. And that's why we titled our variable yield grams, because this is a numeric field that we have just prepared. So now we go and click on that yield data, and we see that it is under Hummer et al. Strawberry Evaluation 2020. When we click on that, we can see that our 284 accessions were added, and GRIN has already broken it down in 10 different levels. So if you want to see the highest yielding ones, there's 3 of them in this highest yielding level, and there's others spread out through. So we have used this process to add yield in grams data for the Hummer et al. Study 2020 for 284 strawberry accessions. And by the way, note that if you have a non-numeric data point in the yield column, that will error out. So if we had NA, for example, which not available, that would cause an error, and that particular row would not get loaded. In that case, you can delete those error records, or you can put a 0 and then put an extra note in that note section saying that this data was not available for the study. So we have successfully loaded 284 different rows of yield data for strawberries in GRIN. Congratulations, and we'll go on from here to the next one. Thanks for listening. See you next time.